In this video, we're going to look at public opinion polling. What exactly is public opinion? Well, it's a general sentiment of a given population. Perhaps it's voters in an upcoming election. Perhaps it's just citizens in a district trying to figure out what people think. Do they approve of something? Do they disapprove of something? Are they going to vote for the incumbent government, or are they going to vote for a change? One thing that it's important to keep in mind about public opinion polling: it is a snapshot in time. It is an attempt to gather this picture of the population, this general sentiment at a specific point in time. It is not necessarily a prediction. We run into that at election time. People look at published opinion polls and they assume that that's the way the election is going to work out, but that's not always the case. How does public opinion polling work? Well, it starts by taking a population that you want to study. So you want to learn something about a population. Again, it could be all citizens in a jurisdiction. It could be potential voters in an upcoming election. It could be people affected by a specific policy. It's often prohibitive, cost prohibitive. It might be too expensive. It might be too difficult to survey everybody in that population. So instead, a sample is taken. A group of people from the population, a smaller group, so a small sample of that population. Those folks are asked a series of questions. Maybe they're online, maybe they're by the phone. Could be focus groups and interviews, but those people are asked questions. Those question results are analyzed, run through some statistical tests to produce an estimate of how likely those responses are to the general population, the probability. What are the probability that these responses we've got from this small group of people are reflective of the entire population? That's really the exercise of public opinion polling, is trying to guess what people think, what a large group of people think, by asking a small group of people some questions and determining what the probability is that those two things are the same. There are naturally some problems with this. The first one starts with the subject, the people that are answering the questions. Preference formation, how voters and respondents to surveys actually get their preferences and express them through surveys. Decades of political science research suggest that those might not always be accurate. Voters might not have the sophistication required to express the opinions on the topics they're being asked. And there are times when people might give completely contradictory responses based on the way that they are primed to think about the question, or based on their own political leanings. There's also problems with the mode, the survey delivery mode. Each one will have some challenges. For example, phone surveys versus online surveys. Is it going to be a live interviewer or an interactive voice response? Those are two different types of surveys that could produce different results. One of those reasons is the social desirability effect. If you are asking people in person in a live interview about a controversial topic, they might want to give an answer that portrays them in a good light rather than reveal their true feelings. And so that's called social desirability bias. It might not give us an accurate depiction of public opinion. There's also non-response bias. Some people just don't want to respond to opinion polls. And if those people are all alike, then the polls will be missing those. They will be missing those people's preference because they choose not to participate in opinion polls. There's also question effects. The questions themselves can produce specific results. Different wordings. The way you word a question might elicit different responses, especially in a political or partisan context. The order of the questions can also affect how people respond. And then, of course, just design effects visually. Is there a midpoint? Is it a list? If it's a list, people tend to pick the top thing. If it's spread out horizontally, people tend to pick the thing in the middle. So you want to be mindful of those kind of things when evaluating and interpreting public opinion polling data. Given the challenges and given the nature of public opinion polling, are the results really useful? Well, they can be. They can help give a picture of a trend over time. While public opinion polls are only a snapshot, when you take repeated snapshots over time, you can get an idea of how the public mood or the public sentiment might be changing. Often when we're talking about approval or disapproval of governments, vote intention at election time. Sometimes opinion polls can help inform that. They can also inform governments whether to adopt a specific policy or not, based on how people are feeling at specific points in time and how that has changed over time. The trend is probably the most useful. So, just to recap public opinion polling, great for getting a general sentiment of a population. It's a snapshot in time. It's probably more useful to look at the trend over time. It is a challenge to get accurate results, partly because of the survey instruments, but largely because of the respondents themselves.